Yo, what's going on, man? Today is October the 10th, 2023. It's your boy Chris, and this is another edition of the NBA team previews. We're moving kind of fast, man. We started this last week, and we're already up to, I want to say maybe, 14 to 16 teams already? I haven't really been counting, but we've been doing 2 teams a day since the beginning of last Tuesday. So what's that? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, then Monday and Tuesday. So what's that? 6 days, 2 teams, so 14 teams, I think, at the end of today. So we're moving pretty quickly. Every team that's ranked that finished with a better record last year than the Golden State Warriors and the Brooklyn Nets, I've done already. So previewed already and kind of looked into those teams, kind of talked about future markets for those teams. So definitely go back and check out the shows if you haven't already over on YouTube at Crispy Cappin there. And if you guys are new, definitely subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Turn the notification bell on so you know when I go live. And for everybody, just hit that like button for me if you can. It definitely helps with the algorithm. I'm not on Twitter as much as I used to be. So I'm limited in who my tweets actually get to. So all the love is always appreciated as well. Before we get started, like I said, we'll jump into the Brooklyn Nets, give you guys my thoughts on the Brooklyn Nets for this upcoming season. Also give you guys my thoughts on the Golden State Warriors. But if anybody else got any thoughts that they want to share on these teams, I'm definitely open to listen. I don't know everything, and as a community, we can all kind of come together. We can share insight. Maybe you read something that I didn't read. Maybe you know something that I don't know, and we can kind of make money together like that as well. Of course, this is a betting show, right? We're not here to give our opinions on the players or how well or how poor they are. We're here to try to figure out how we can make monies off these teams, whether we're betting on them or we're fading them. So before we jump into it, one line of business I wanted to talk about real quick. And that would be the promo for Odds Jam. I talk about this sometimes, but for people who don't know, I am a sponsor of Odds Jam. The reason why I use it's a ton of different reasons to use Odds Jam. I'm probably the best software that you guys will find on the planet as far as everything that they have. It really takes betting to the next level. What I really like Odds Jam for, and this is something that I use on a daily, probably an hourly basis, whether it's on my phone or on my MacBook, is the Sportsbook screen page. So on the Sportsbook screen page, pretty much you can set this thing up however you want to. You can customize it so that only sports books that are available to you in your state, you can see the odds for it. And it's not just spreads, right? It's not just totals. It's not just team totals, but you can go through and look at props. You can go through and look at player rush yard attempts, quarterback completions, player receiving yards. And then for NBA, it's the same thing, right? PRAs, just points plus rebounds, and it'll give you the best line based on what you're looking for. We know you have to be able to beat the number to win consistently. So you find the best number over there. Use code CBC at checkout. Get your first month 25% off over there. So the link is also posted on YouTube if you guys are interested in that as well. With no further ado, let's jump right into it. Let's jump into the Brooklyn Nets. Let's start with the Brooklyn Nets. And I was interested, kind of wanted to go back and I watched a little bit of the game last night. They did take on the Lakers in their first preseason game. So I kind of went back and looked at, not went back. I was actually watching, trying my best to pay attention to that game as much as possible. Wasn't a lot of defense being played. You could tell both teams were really just trying to get out and run. But I will say the big addition for them, at least yesterday, the biggest takeaway was Ben Simmons actually playing. 14 points, 14 minutes last night. He did score 10 points. He was a -7, but that's just really because they weren't playing a lot of defense. He did score 10 points in 14 minutes, which is kind of promising for him. Had 3 assists as well. I saw him drive to the lane, get a couple pretty solid finishes, and he looks like he may have his confidence back. And we know with Big Ben Simmons, that was really it for him, I think, in totality last year. So a lot of videos of him going around, a lot of quotes from him from the training camp talking about how he feels better, how he's back. I guess his back is not giving him as many problems this year. So let's jump right into this Brooklyn Nets team. So as far as odds, to win this team will, in my estimation, take a step back from what they did last year. To win the Atlantic Division, they are plus 4,000. Is that right? Jesus, that's pretty big odds. I think that might be. No, I'm sorry. That's to win the title. I'm sorry. I definitely got that wrong. To win the title, they're plus 4,000. These odds are not correct. Let me. I got to make sure these are updated. Because this is definitely not right. So I'll come back to that. I gotta pull these numbers up real quick. I know these can't be the right numbers that I'm looking at right now. But neither here nor there. We'll let me give you guys the updated numbers real quick because I do have them right in front of me. My apologies. All right. So to win the Atlantic, no, I was right. To win the Atlantic, they are plus 4,000. I didn't think it was that bad for the Nets. My fault. To win the Atlantic, they are plus 4,000. I was right. To win the East, they are plus 6,000, and to win the title, they are plus 15,000. So, a lot of great value if you like this Brooklyn Nets team. I'm not a somebody that's going to be interested in playing on this Nets team. I kind of gave you guys just a kind of general idea of how I'll be looking probably to bet the Nets throughout this season. But let's talk about what this team has done over the offseason. So you bring in Noah Clowney, Dart Whitehead also. So those will be two forwards that'll be playing for this team this year. I don't think neither of them actually project to crack the rotation in a meaningful way. Not to say that they won't get minutes, but I don't think either one of those guys will have significant play. You lose Steph Curry, you lose Joe Harris, and you also lose Patty Mills. So that takes away some perimeter shooting, ability to be able to kind of stretch the floor, which is what you need in today's NBA. They did give Cam Johnson a nice little bag. He got $108 million 4-year deal there. And then, of course, to go back to last season, which is where this debacle all kind of happened. Of course, you trade Kyrie and KD away. You keep Ben Simmons. You bring in Cam Johnson, and Mikal Bridges is now the cornerstone of this franchise and the lead guy. This Brooklyn Nets team won 44 games last year. I want to say I got that number up as well. Let me just check to make sure. I want to say it was 44 games, but I want to make sure I'm accurate. Make sure I give you guys the right information. Give me 1 second. So Brooklyn, 45 games. They went 45-37. So the books are kind of anticipating this team to go the opposite way this year, right? So win total sitting at 37.5 this year. And if I had to bet it, I think the number is really close to being accurate. But if I had to bet it, I'd probably look towards the under. And here's my reason why. So I just don't think that this team is going to trend in the right direction. First of all, when you think about difficulty of schedule, they do have the 17th most difficult schedule. I do think that, Nick Claxton is somebody that's probably worked on his game over all season. He did look pretty good yesterday in the limited minutes that he played with that first unit. But you don't have to me, this team just it lacks a lot. We remember how they lost last year. They lost in the first round against the overpowering Philadelphia 76ers. All of those games actually went to the under, I want to say. And this team really struggled to score. And that's what I kind of referenced yesterday when I was talking about this team. The Nets actually finished, if you look at the whole season, you won't really find, too much of a blemish for this team as far as offensive, defensive numbers. But if you go in specifically and look at the second half of the season, they actually had the 24th offensive rating after the All-Star break. And of course, that's when KD and Kyrie got traded after the All-Star break. Their defensive rating actually got probably about, I didn't compare the two, but they were 13th defensively. So wherever that kind of puts them as far as, what they were able to do after the All-Star break, from a defensive perspective. So offense kind of took a nosedive. It was actually one of the worst offenses and that's what we kind of saw in the, throughout the end of the regular season and into the playoffs because you lose KD and you lose Kyrie. Now, in my estimation, you lose even more offense with the likes of Joe Harris, with the likes of Steph Curry, guys that can kind of fill it up from the perimeter. Granted, Joe Harris, have been hurt for the last couple years. So I want to do something real quick. I just want to look at the Nets, and I want to look at them after the All-Star break just to kind of see what that number was last year from a betting perspective, not just the offensive efficiency rating perspective. So while that loads, I think I've been kind of talking about this in every show, but I do think that the Brooklyn Nets I do think that the Eastern Conference didn't take a step up, right? A lot of these teams are, in my estimation, didn't make a lot of great moves. And that number that I was looking for, so in the last 18 games after the All-Star break last season, the Nets were a buy-on team if you were playing the under. 17-11 to the under. That's 50. That's 61%. So you cash 61% of your bets if you just played them to the under. And that also, like I said, included the playoff games as well. The first two games versus the Sixers, they went over. In the last three games, they just couldn't score the ball. They scored 88 points, 97 points, and 84 points in those games. So I think that, when this team is playing against a very competitive team, we'll be able to take them, towards that under. Of course, Mikal Bridges is a really, really good player. I like Mikal Bridges a lot. It's going to be interesting to see if he can kind of take that next step this year, especially, given that he has the keys to the city now that he's in Brooklyn. Cam Johnson, there'll be a lot more expected of him as well, in my estimation. And also, I'm just interested to see what Coach Jacques Vaughn does with a player like Cam Thomas, somebody that can really fill it up, right? Somebody that can score the ball. If people were watching last night, him and Austin Reeves actually almost had a 3-point shootout in the middle of the game yesterday, where Cam Thomas hit 3 threes and Austin Reeves were able to go back and hit 2 threes. It was 5 threes hit back to back between the two players. So it's going to be interesting to see how they try to integrate him just a tad bit more, in my estimation, because he is such a firecracker, microwave type player that can really get hot and kind of carry your offense for periods of time when you might have to rest a guy like Mikal Bridges or Cam Johnson, and you don't have that much offense out there on the floor. So if I had to bet anything on this team, like I said, I'll probably be looking at the win total to go under. I'm not a big fan of this team with their lack of offensive prowess, in my estimation. I think that they will be able to beat some of the lower seeds in the Eastern Conference, but I do think that they're going to struggle, man. Like I said, they only went 11-17 after the All-Star break last year. 11-17 straight up, 12-15-1 against the number. And then, like I said, 17-11 to the under. They really struggled to score the ball, only averaging 109 points per game during that span and giving up 111. So those are my thoughts on the Brooklyn Nets. Anybody else got anything they want to mention? And I did all of that without even putting the odds up at the bottom. But like I said, I don't think we have any value here in my estimation, because it's not a team that I want to put my hard-earned money on. I think the Eastern Conference is a lot better. And it'll be a rebuilding year again, even though you do have a guy like Mikal Bridges on this team this year. So those are my thoughts on the Brooklyn Nets. Anybody got anything? If so, let me know. If not, I'm going to go to the YouTube comment section real quick, check those out, and then we'll keep going and get on to the Golden State Warriors. So Prolific says, Chris always trying to cap in the show. I appreciate that. I appreciate it. Barksdale said, glad we back. I missed these streams. Appreciate you, Barksdale. Definitely appreciate you being here, man. And Prolific said he caught Real Madrid. Did Real Madrid even win that game? I actually was had to miss the rest of that game. Did they end up winning? I'm not even sure. I checked my account and they tell me, oh yeah, Real Madrid did win. I know they were losing in the fourth quarter when I looked, but I did say I like Real Madrid. I didn't give it out as an official play, but to my YouTube members, but I did like Real Madrid. They scored 37 points in the fourth quarter to end up beating the Dallas Mavericks. Luka like messed his leg up or something yesterday, and so he only played the first 5 minutes, and Kyrie was sitting. And Real Madrid is for people who don't know, Real Madrid is like probably the 32nd best team in the world after you look outside the NBA. Like, they got some real hoopers over there. I think 9 players on that team had NBA experience over the last couple years. So yeah, I'm glad you guys if you caught it, I'm glad you did. Shout out to Keith. Looks like he caught it as well. Yeah, Real Madrid came through for us. Appreciate Real Madrid for that. So yeah, that's what we got there. And let's keep going. If we don't have any other thoughts on this Brooklyn Nets team, let's jump over to the Golden State Warriors. So now we are looking at, let's see. So now we're looking. So now we transition to the Golden State Warriors. This is an interesting team in my estimation. So odds for Golden State. First of all, to win the Pacific Division, win their division, they're plus 390. You guys can see these odds. I posted them at the bottom over on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. To win the West, they're plus 750, so 7.5 to 1. And then to win the title, they're 14 to 1. interesting odds for them to kind of win the title. I thought that they might be a little bit bigger of a dog to actually win the title, given that the Western Conference is so stacked. I thought Golden State would have less of a chance, but because they are off a loss last year and they won the year before, I think the books just aren't going to quite discount them yet with them having their core pieces of Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and of course Klay Thompson. Of course, you still got the snake at the head as well as Steve Kerr. But this is a team that actually got older, right? We know the blockbuster deal that happened for them over the offseason was, getting rid of, kind of dumping Jordan Poole's contract that they literally had just gave him after beating Boston 2 years ago. But you dump that contract and you bring in Chris Paul, a guy that's on the last year of his deal, entering season number 19 at 38 years old. So Chris Paul we know what Chris Paul is. He's a guy that is definitely a Hall of Famer. He's a guy that's going to facilitate your offense. Not sure how much he's going to have to do that this year. I do think that he will do that, though. Let me reframe that. I do think Chris Paul is going to be the point guard of this team. I think Steph Curry is going to play off ball a little bit more, which is going to can make it a little bit harder. This is something that they tried to do when they had Jordan Poole in as well. But Jordan Poole just always seemed to be much more of a scorer than he was of a facilitator. So with Chris Paul being on his team, it legit will be, from my estimation, Steph Curry's first time playing with a very true, probably the truest of truths when we think about point guards in the NBA. So, like I said, you get Chris Paul, you get an old Chris Paul. Like I said, he is 38 years old, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be a little bit, probably as motivated as he has been in his career. And for people who pay attention, like Chris Paul is, we talk about Bron spending millions of dollars on his body, to kind of rehab and, just kind of keep himself in the best condition. Chris Paul also is someone who has a regimen that might not be as strict, but he is pretty strict in his as well. I know he went vegan a couple years ago, to kind of help with longevity of being able to play in the NBA. So, and I think he's probably extremely hungry. Probably feel like he got a chip on his shoulder the way Phoenix kind of did him as well. Although I'm pretty sure he understands that this is a business at the end of the day also. But Chris Paul is an interesting dynamic because he is really the only player that they kind of brought in. Of course, you lose Dante DiVincenzo. I don't think that they're really excited about that. Dante DiVincenzo will be in New York. We talked about them yesterday. But I really like I don't like them losing Dante DiVincenzo, a guy that can stretch the floor, a guy that can play some of those backup minutes. So this team got older to me. You also, a lot of people won't pay attention to this and put this into their handicap, but Bob Myers is now out as well as the general manager, and you bring in Mike Dunleavy. He was actually the guy who pulled the trigger on the Jordan Poole deal. I think it was like 10 days after he signed the contract with them. So looking back at last season. So those are the additions and subtractions, not a lot, right? You kind of keep of course, you re-sign Draymond as well. You give him, $100 million deal, also 4-year, $100 million deal. Last season, this team had to go 7 games against Sacramento Kings in the first round of the playoffs. It took a heroic Steph Curry 50-point ball to beat that Sacramento team in Sacramento in Game 7. I think Sacramento probably learned a lot from that series. They were kind of the little brother, the little bro, and it just kind of happened to them. And in that scenario, you typically want to go with the more veteran team, right? Especially when you played each other 6 times and probably 12 times over the course of the whole season. So they did end up winning in the first round, but they end up losing to the Lakers in 6 in the second round. And we saw Klay Thompson just kind of not be the best version of himself. A lot of clanks. Steph Curry kind of put the team on his back. Jordan Poole was nowhere to be found, which I think kind of led to, him being shipped off. Draymond looked like he was, played really small, couldn't really stop Anthony Davis on every other game. Because if we remember, Anthony Davis will have a good game, bad game, good game, bad game. But it was great that he had a good game to start the series, because then it ended up being, going pretty well for the Lakers. So that's what kind of happened with Golden State last year. They ended up losing to the Lakers. It was the first season for Golden State of them playing under Coach Steve Kerr and then making the playoffs and not actually advancing all the way to the finals. With Golden State, they typically are healthy and they get to the finals, or they're not healthy and they lose in the, they don't even make it to the playoffs. I'm sorry. They don't even make it to the playoffs. So It's going to be pretty interesting, man. This team has a projected win total of 48.5 this year. That, to me, that feels like a really high number. And the reason why it does is because last year they won 44 games. And we did see some injuries last year. Like they had some guys that went out for different stints throughout the season. But also, you see a player, a coach like Steve Kerr, especially having these guys that are in, all of their years are all your core is, double-digit years when we're thinking about Steph Curry. I think it's year 14 for Steph. And I could be wrong with that, but I know him, Clay, and Draymond are all in double-digit, years for them as far as their, tenure with this team and playing in the NBA. So it's gonna be interesting to see how he manages their minutes. I do have the other. Well, at least I thought I did. I have the other. I told you guys I had a website that I was using to kind of look at teams from a back-to-back perspective, from a third game to four night perspective. So I want to share that with you guys real quick if I can pull it up, because these are like really the interesting numbers. Kind of looking at the when you look at strength of schedule, the Golden State Warriors don't have a cupcake schedule this year. They do have the seventh most difficult schedule. And a lot of that is the second leg of a back-to-back. A lot of that is third game in four night, fourth game in 6 nights, and fifth game in 7 nights, which Coach Kerr in the past, he's actually rested some of those starters. Now, of course, the NBA has, tried to minimize that by putting in the fine, the disciplinary stuff this year where, you can't rest, quote unquote, all-star players on the second leg of a back-to-back. Well, not second leg of a back-to-back, but in those spots, you can't rest 2 of them. So with those guys being all-star caliber players, if you made an all-star team, I think in the last 3 years, 1, 2, or 3, or if you made the all-star team last year, or all NBA player, then you won't be able to rest without taking a penalty. You won't be able to rest 2 players without taking a penalty as a team. So that is, I think, probably the most interesting thing in my estimation about this team specifically. So I'm looking for that sheet, and of course I don't have it up. Of course I can't find it again, but I literally just saw it last night after I got off. So still feeling a little unprepared. There's a lot going on over here. But anyway, even without that, 48.5 games, I feel like the number is a tad bit high. I feel like the Western Conference is going to be extremely competitive. And for this team to win 5 more games, I think it's going to be difficult. I think looking back at the Western Conference last year, it kind of felt like Denver jumped out on teams. It feels like Memphis jumped out on teams before everything happened with Ja Morant. Those 2 teams kind of went out and got in front of everyone as far as win totals, as far as taking the regular season serious. And then you had teams that pretty much finished 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And maybe even 3. I can't remember exactly what that, what the difference in record was. But those teams all you could say play with their food to a certain extent, because they didn't take the regular season as serious. They were resting guys. And then you see a crapshoot at the end of the season where teams are jockeying, trying to get home court advantage, trying to, make sure they're not playing, said team that might be in position 1 or position 2. And it I say all that to say, I don't think that's going to happen again. Right. I think you see teams try to jump out and get out in front, in the standings. I don't think that they'll be as much, playing around with playing around with your food, if you would say, with these teams in the Western Conference, because the conference is going to be so difficult. So 48.5, I think that number is a tad bit high for Golden State. Could they win that many? Absolutely. We know that the big way we kind of faded Golden State last year was specifically them, playing on the road. This was one of the most bizarre teams that you'll ever find on the road last year. It was a team that you pretty much could fade almost every single game, with them being on the road last year, and you would have done so with success because they just couldn't cover a spread. Defensively, they were really, really bad on the road last year, and the difference was really like night and day. So it's going to be interesting to see and I'm pretty sure they'll want to correct that so people aren't bringing that narrative up, again this year. So that's also going to be an interesting perspective from last year to this year. Last year, just put some numbers behind that. Last year, this team was 30-6 30-16, so 65% against the spread when they were playing at home. And they were 37-10 straight up. I mean, you can't get too much better than that. That's one of the better home records, one of the best home ATS records. But on the road, I mean, pretty much is almost flipped. 14 games is what they won. I'm sorry, 14 games is what they covered, and they failed to cover 34%, 34 games. So only covered 29%. So if you faded them on the road, I mean, 65.2% is really good money if you just bet against them on the road against the spread last year. And they actually only won 13 games on the road out of 47. So they went 13-35 last year. Pretty sure Coach Steve Kerr, Steph, Dre, Clay, all those guys are going to want to correct that. And I'm not saying it's necessarily going to be easy, but I do think we see a little bit more effort from them. Sometimes I talked about this early on the show. Sometimes when these teams are coming off championship performances, you kind of start the next series the next season a little slow, and that might be what we see with Denver as well this season. So if I had to play anything on Golden State, I wouldn't put it. If people were asking for my opinion about this projected win total, I still think it's a tad bit too high. Can they win 48 games? I do think that they can. But could they finish around that 47, 46, 45 range? I think they could as well. You're also asking, a lot for Chris Paul to stay healthy, and their four best players are all pretty old. Not to say that Steph can't go out there and still, get a bucket, and Clay can't contribute offensively because he can. And Draymond was talking about finding this shot over the offseason. But I just and they probably do have a chip on their shoulder the way they went out to Los Angeles, the way they went out to the Lakers last year. But I wouldn't bet them to go over the 48.5 win total. Wouldn't put any future money on them to win the West or to win the division either, because I feel like we'll probably get a better number, especially if they start off a little slow. And as far as numbers for Golden State, so last year this team finished. Let's see. They were the 10th best offensive team and the 14th best defensive team. But I'm pretty sure if you look at the numbers from home to road in those splits, you see a pretty solid effort at home on the defensive end and not so much, probably the opposite. Because like I said, this team was night and day when you think about them going from home to road. As far as beginning of the season, so Golden State actually has, I want to look at their schedule real quick just to see how it kind of starts, because they are a pretty healthy team. I watched them beat my Lakers on opening night. Jonathan Kuminga is somebody I think that's going to play really well with Chris Paul this year. And you can kind of tell that he's been working on his game over the offseason. They have 28 points and 8 rebounds in their first game. And they play the Lakers on Friday, which this coming Friday. They play the Lakers again. This one will be at crypto.com. They start the season off. They actually have some pretty difficult games. They play in Phoenix. They host Phoenix to open the season on October 24th. The game's nationally televised on TNT. Then they follow that up and go to Sacramento. That also is an ESPN game. You go to Houston, which should be a pretty easy win, even though Houston is going to look a little better this year, I think. But they do have a day off of rest. But then you got Houston, and right after Houston, you got to go to New Orleans to play the following day. That's October 29th and October 30th. So back-to-back road games with no rest in between. And New Orleans, I think, will be a little bit better, especially if Zion can stay healthy. Then you go back to the Kings, and you start a really difficult road trip where you go to OKC, and you start on the East Coast, Cleveland, Detroit. It should be an easy win, even though if you pay attention, Golden State has really struggled against Detroit. And I'm not 100. I think some of it is because there's always the second leg of a back-to-back. Sometimes they're resting players, and Detroit always give them their best effort. I think Detroit actually beat them last year. I know they've been covering the spread over the course of the last 4 or 5 years because it's typically a spot I like to back Detroit in. And the Detroit game is actually after a Sunday game in Cleveland. So there'll be a third game in 4 nights because you get OKC. You got to go to OKC on Friday. You get one day to fly from OKC to Cleveland, and you play on Sunday. So you get Saturday off, and then legit Monday, you got to go and play in Detroit. And it's a sandwich spot because you also got the Denver Nuggets on Wednesday as well. So, and then you come back home and you host Cleveland, Minnesota twice, OKC twice. So it's a really difficult schedule for them right out the shoot, in my estimation, especially with all those that 4-game road trip that's pretty grueling and daunting. And you come back home and you still you get one of the better teams, which is the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Minnesota Timberwolves in back-to-back spots as well. So like I said, they got a difficult schedule. I think I told you guys they got the 7th most difficult schedule, and that's what it's looking like for the Golden State Warriors. Anybody got thoughts on the Warriors? Let me know what you're thinking about the Warriors. I am going to just for the record, I am going to do a separate show on player props for the season. But when I'm looking at when I'm doing these season projections, I am looking at specific win totals. I'm looking at this team to win the title. I'm looking at this team to win the division. And I'm kind of just catching everybody up on additions, subtractions, what I'm seeing in the preseason from these teams. Y'all know I'm super locked in when it comes to the NBA. Even if I don't get to catch it live, I typically go back and watch, go how the league pass, all that good stuff as well. Stefan, you are up, my guy. How you doing today?
Doing excellent, bro. How are you?
I'm good, man. I cannot complain. You want to go back, Stefan, give any thoughts on the Brooklyn Nets, which I know is pretty close to you, or you want to jump right into the Warriors? The floor is yours, my guy.
I wanted to jump in on the Warriors, bro.
Okay.
Great breakdown by you. I was really enjoying that. This division is kind of crazy. We just look at like all these teams that are going to beat up on each other. I just really just had a question, which was, what are you thinking about? I know you mentioned you're going to do like a props kind of show, but the division winner with the Suns at plus 130, like it kind of feels like if you had a strong take on this division that was contrarian, that you really could like cash in, because like the Kings are 650, the Clippers are 650, the Warriors are 390, the Lakers are 370. So your Lakers in that division. So just want to get your thoughts. Like, what do you think about the division?
Yeah, I think so. This is one of the tougher divisions, Stefan, in the league, in my estimation. And really, when you're breaking that down, it really comes down to health. Not only is this division super stacked when you think about the Pacific Division, but you got like so many old players in this division, right? This division can make its own all-star team, Stephen, when you think about it, right? You got Stephen Clay in the backcourt. You got PG and Kawhi and small forward. LeBron got to go in there somewhere. Oh, don't forget, we still got De'Aaron Fox. We can't leave out, and Sabonis down there. And we didn't even talk about the Phoenix Suns. That's without mentioning Bradley Beal, KD, and and Devin Booker, right? So like this to me, it really comes down to health. I just don't like. I do like the price that you're able to get on these teams, but I think that really comes down to the health wise. If you tell me that Kawhi is gonna miss some time, and that one of the big three might be injured and maybe miss 20 games, and that AD is going to be AD when it comes to his health, then I might be looking at the Kings again, because they are the younger team. They are the I think last year, really gave them some experience. They didn't have a lot of turnover as far as personnel, and you give Mike Brown another year with these young guys. So I think that's only going to help them, especially lock in on the defensive end. And I think that they're the younger team. They're probably the healthiest team of the teams, right? We've seen Draymond be hurt. We've seen Clay be hurt. And I hate to base it all on injuries, but I do feel like this is probably the best division, but also probably the oldest division and the most injury-plagued division in all of them, Stephen. What are your thoughts? Who would you, if you had to take one, what would you do?
It's crazy because with the injuries is such a big thing. And like the big thing with this Warriors team is like, what is the lineup going to look like? Like this whole Chris Paul thing, like he's going to have to probably come off the bench and play a more reserved role. Like I was like watching like the footage of them in practice, and they're running sets of him and Steph, and like Steph's going to play like more off ball. Like it's just like a weird fit. Like I can see a world where it works, but it's just like I don't know. Like another interesting thing is like get your thoughts on this. Like, what do you think about like Chris Paul with like his assist props like this year? Like, do you think it's gonna be like one of those like we gotta wait and see, or do you like early on think like that's a spot where we can like take advantage of?
Man, I think if Coach Kerr could be honest with us, Stephen, about what his role will be, like if he can define that for us, and maybe we see it in the last couple games of preseason, but I don't think the Warriors are ever taking preseason serious. I think it's a spot that we probably, depending on the numbers, I think it's a buy low spot to start, right? Just because like we haven't gotten anything solid on how many minutes he's going to be playing, whether he's going to be starting, whether he's going to be coming off the bench. I do think that it makes sense to kind of stagger him, right? Like not even him, but last year we saw like Draymond be the first starter out a lot of the times because that second unit was so bad that they kind of had to have him as the point guard to come back in and kind of run with that second unit when Steph and Clay were getting their first break. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they kind of like play those minutes, right? Because you with Steph and Clay, being a year older, you do want to kind of limit their minutes. Like the coaches that get to the finals consistently, 3 years out of 5, 2 years out of the last 6, or something like that. They know what it takes as far as the NBA being a long, grueling, season, and they understand that availability is the best ability. So I think that you want to limit Steph minutes. You want to limit. Now, I don't mean like limit him, to like to a substantial difference between what he played last year. But I do think that you want to kind of minimize that to a certain point, right? Like it'd be nice if Steph played 2 less minutes this year and the team numbers still kind of look the same. And I think the same thing with Clay. So I think there'll be times where they're not all on the floor together. And because of that stuff, I do think that, he'll have the ball in his hands a lot. And because of that, I think that we'll get value on his assist number. But I would love for Coach Steve Kerr to say, yeah, this is going to be his role. This is how many minutes we're going to play him. Because to me, that feels, I feel a little bit better putting my money on it then.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think? What do you think the number is going to be on opening night? You think we get a 6.5, 7.5?
Yeah, man. I almost wonder if we might even get like a 5.5. You never know with these opening night lines, but you're probably like 6.5. That's all I have, but I got to give you credit for being unbiased because, no mentions of like what the Lakers did to the Warriors last year. No mention of how, AD dominated that series. We were all over AD last year. So shout out to you, man. I appreciate the breakdown on the Warriors, bro.
No, absolutely, bro. I appreciate your thoughts as well, and hell of a question too, Steph. Hell of questions from you. Those were really good questions. Like I said, I'm gonna dive in a little bit more, but also opening night, Stephen. This is the interesting thing about opening night. Opening night is a Warriors home game against his Phoenix Suns, right? So that might, man, if he ever gonna be juiced for a game, I know it's the beginning of the season, but if he ever gonna be juiced for a game, I think it's gonna be that one. Also, pencil in Wednesday, November 22nd. That'll be the first time he goes back to Phoenix as well. Also an ESPN game, and they get the day off before because they play the Rockets on the 20th, which is a Monday. That Wednesday will be the game in Phoenix at 10 p.m. So 2 games that you kind of want to, Chris Paul, I'm pretty sure probably got circled, being that, that he probably felt like he was done dirty. He was, not lack of production, but more so just couldn't stay healthy. And, they got rid of him for that. So appreciate Stephen for stopping through and asking the great questions that he presented. Casual, what's going on, man? Can you hear me?
Yo, Chris, what's up?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. This is season 3 of me rocking with you.
I appreciate that, bro. Definitely appreciate that, man.
So I got a couple of things. Going back to 2 seasons ago, I actually got this from one of your spaces, and I was looking for it very specifically when I'm going to go talk Golden State first. That third quarter, that Golden State third quarter, specifically with sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. I think a lot of it's going to be. I'm really looking at Jonathan Kuminga. I think Kuminga could have a really big year, and I'm going to be playing that Warriors third quarter spread. It paid my rent a couple of times 2 seasons ago. It wasn't hitting quite like it was last year, but that's something I'm looking at for this coming season, and I really like it. I think Kuminga is going to really have a big year. I'm really high on Jonathan Kuminga.
Okay. So to your points, Casual, I think I'm looking at the numbers right now. So you're right. Golden State third quarter has been a thing for a while now. And it's more so like when it doesn't really matter if they're at home or on the road, but they typically perform a lot better at home than they do on the road in the third quarter. Last year, it's not even necessarily their offensive rate neither. They're not the greatest offensive team in the third quarter, but it's more so their defense. Last year, they were the best third quarter defensive team, and that's what we've seen over the last couple of years. 102.9 was their defensive rating, by far the best team in the third quarter. And I want to say their plus minus was probably, I'm looking at advanced stats. So I'm not looking at, in totality, but it looks like plus 10 is the offensive versus defensive. Well, the net rating is plus a 9.7, positive plus 9.7. So this was a really, really good third quarter team last year, post All-Star break, throughout the totality of the season. And the reason why I look at post All-Star break is because that's when teams actually take the season a lot more serious. Throughout the entirety of the season, Golden State was actually just a plus 5.7. So when they really had to win last year to solidify, they wanted home court advantage, and they actually won it throughout the second half of the season. They really turned it on. That defensive rating got drastically improved, because that net rating went from a 5.7 to a 9.7, which is a big jump from one half of the season to the other. So definitely something that you want to have pin, Casual, especially if you catch them in a really good spot. Maybe they're down at halftime. Maybe they're, only winning by a couple and they should be blowing a team out. Definitely jump on Golden State. Always been profitable last couple of years to taking them, even if you just bet it every single time. If they're performing below expectations throughout the first half of the game. So interesting comments, and definitely glad you reminded me of that, because I actually hadn't thought about that. Casual. So I'm glad you mentioned that as well.
Yeah, of course. And then I guess I have some questions as far as the Brooklyn Nets are going. I'm going to need somebody to talk me off, because, man, I'm about to get fooled again. I think Ben Simmons looks good out there, man. I know he hasn't played a lot of minutes, but I'm high on Ben Simmons this year.
Yeah. So what, like, are you thinking about playing like a player prop on Ben Simmons, or are you thinking about like team success because Ben Simmons plays well, and like maybe taking the win total over?
A combination, but first I really want to see like how are they going to run Simmons at the point? Like they did that, I think, in a preseason game that I was watching. I just want to see how they're going to use him first, because he was looking really good out there. I don't know if you got to see him play for a little bit, but I don't know. I don't know about prime Ben Simmons, but I mean, I think Brooklyn can really shake things up.
Yeah,
That's just my take.
No. I think defensively it's going to keep them in a lot of games, Casual. I think defensively it's going to keep them in a lot of games. But remember this: if you're betting on Ben Simmons, you're betting on not just Ben Simmons to look as good as he did last night. You're looking for him not to be hurt as well, right? We know back injuries can kind of unfortunately they can kind of come back up, and they can kind of linger. Sounds like he's doing well. Sounds like he's in good spirits. He definitely has his confidence back. Based on what I was seeing last night in that game versus the Lakers. And he can definitely shake some things up. I don't think, as far as him playing point guard, Casual, him and Spencer Dinwiddie kind of, splitting that role. I do think that, Spencer Dinwiddie is still going to be the primary ball handler for the team. But if Ben Simmons gets it off the break, I do think that he's going to push the ball up the floor and kind of initiate the offense, looking for, some primary and secondary action, in transition for sure. So it is something. I'm glad you mentioned that, Casual. You said you want to kind of see what it looks like first and foremost, and then maybe bet it. And that's an option, right? Like these win totals, I'm talking about win totals at the beginning of the season, but win totals that just because you have the market available now doesn't mean you can't wait a few games and then kind of take the bet after a couple games. So could not talk you off of just kind of waiting and seeing how they look. Maybe just evaluating Ben Simmons throughout the entirety of the preseason, and then maybe you take a bet on him. So could not talk you off of that at all, Casual. I don't think you said anything wrong. I forgot to hit on the Kuminga piece, but I do like Kuminga. I like Kuminga a lot, and we got to remember that they actually traded away what's my guy name? Their first pick. I can't think his name. Sent them to Detroit last year. So I do think that'll be more minutes for Kuminga, and Draymond Green just getting a tad bit older. He also had a really good offseason, like I said. So I think Kuminga, James Wiseman. Glad you mentioned him, Casual. Thank you. So Wiseman not being there, is going to be more minutes for Kuminga. And if he looked like, I watched that game against the Lakers, he looked like he just had a lot more confidence. His shot looks good. He looks like he's more decisive. He looks more athletic, which is actually really scary as well. And I just think I think the confidence piece is gonna be a big piece. So I would be right there with you, Casual.
I think that he could have a very similar breakout year like Jordan Poole did during 22 when they won that title. Again, not just my vibes, not just my read, but thanks for having me up, Chris. Excited for Spaces every day. Keep feeding the people the good information.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. Appreciate you for tapping in, man. And the wise word, the kind words as well. But yeah, and I agree with that. I agree with that also. I think him and Chris Paul are going to work really, really well together. Also, Casual. Just because of Chris Paul's basketball mind. And Jonathan Kuminga is like a sponge to these older players, kind of soaking it all up, extremely young as well. So yeah, that 45 minutes in the books, man. I appreciate everybody for tapping in and tuning in. Real quick, my guy Sam in the chat says, "What's good, Chris? My guy, hope you had a good summer." Right back at you, Sam. Hope your summer was good as well. I see you kind of crushing it in tennis, NFL. Sam doing his thing, man. Shout out to Sam for joining the show on YouTube today. And Keith says, "Long shot bet is Steph Curry MVP for him." Okay. Steph getting the MVP. I do think that Steph getting MVP is probably going to be correlated with maybe one of those other players not playing as well. I think if Clay is, hitting on all cylinders and Kuminga has the season that we think he has and Chris Paul contributes the way we think he has, Steph should not have to do as much. But we'll kind of see what that looks like. Barstow said, "No way I could touch the over with the older legs and lack of size." And I would agree there as well. At home, like I said, they play well, but on the road, they struggled last year. So we'll see if they can kind of, turn the tides this year, man. So that's it. Two teams in the books. Tomorrow we have WNBA playoff game number, the WNBA Finals game number 2 between the Liberty and the Aces. And I still will be doing a show. I got the WNBA shirt on today. But I still will be doing a show tomorrow, 5:15 Eastern time. Catch me again. Tomorrow we'll be breaking down the Atlanta Hawks and my LA Lakers. So definitely tune in. You'll want to hit a recap for the previews for those two teams. The Atlanta Hawks, see if they made any strides, and we'll recap my Lakers as well. Lakers also play tomorrow. I think they play the Kings tomorrow, or the Nets again. I think it might be the Kings. So yeah, definitely tap back in with me tomorrow, man. Like I said, if you listen this far, definitely hit the like button for me. Subscribe to the show if you guys haven't already. Hit the notification bell so you know when I go live. Like the show if you're watching on Twitter. Also appreciate all of that good mojo and good vibes there. Best of luck to everybody who got any MLB action or anything else that you guys are betting on tonight. Until tomorrow, man, y'all be good. I'm out.